All right.
Hello again, everyone. This is Amy Hackbarth with Meet the Breeder. Today we have Danielle Boyd coming to us from Weatherford, Texas with her herd MerryTale farm. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So as we usually do, we like to start with the basics and find out how you got into Nigerians or goats in general in the first place.
Well, we purchased our farm about 5 years ago, and I've always loved livestock. Originally, was one of those kids who wanted to be a veterinarian. Went to college at Purdue University, was pre-vet for a couple of years, and then realized that my chemistry and my math grades weren't that great. So ended up changing direction, but still got a minor in animal science, and my heart has just always been with animals, and I've always kind of loved goats. When I moved to Texas, after graduating from Purdue, I worked for a marketing agency that also owned Angora goats. And so I really kind of got my feet wet with goats, with Angoras rather than Nigerians. And we do own a few Angora goats, but my husband said, I really like these Nigerians. I think it's cool that we can have, we can have dairy production, we can have milk, and we can, make soap and cheese and all these different things. And he said the Nigerians are small, so they're great for the kids. We have 3 young children, and so we got Nigerians. And me being kind of the ambitious, competitive person that I am, we went from having 3 does and a buck to now having around 50 Nigerians. And so that's been just like 4 years ago. And so we grew quickly and absolutely love it. We're an ADGA plus herd. We show quite a bit. My children are involved in showing as well. My oldest is only 10, my youngest is 4, but my youngest was doing showmanship at like 2 years old. So that's been really fun to kind of get him, he's known nothing but, but goats and Nigerians.
Would you mind sharing a little bit, because most of our conversations revolve around the Nigerians. I would love to hear a little bit of your thoughts on the Angoras versus the Nigerians, just some differences between the 2 breeds, how, if you have to manage them differently, if their feed program's different. If you wouldn't mind touching on that, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, and I've actually had a lot of breeders, both Nigerian breeders and then Angora breeders, that have reached out to me and said, okay, you have both, like, how does this work? And the, Angora goats, a lot of people see them and think that they're sheep, but they're not. They're a goat. They're a fiber producing goat. They produce mohair and they're sheared twice a year. And mine coexist just fine together. The Angoras are a little bit pushier at feeding time, but otherwise are really, quite docile goat. And I think, aside from feeding, the Nigerians probably push the Angoras around a little bit more. The Nigerians are definitely a lot harder on my fences. Of course, the Angora goats have horns. Our Nigerians do not, because we do focus a lot on show as well as milk. I want every animal that I have to be able to be shown. So we do not have any horned Nigerians at all. Feeding wise, they do pretty well. I mean, we feed a 16% protein feed to everybody. And that 16% works really well for the Angoras. They do need a pretty high protein feed in order to produce quality fiber. And so we do a 16% protein feed along with shredded beet pulp and alfalfa pellets. And then they also get alfalfa hay and then coastal, which is a grass hay.
Do you breed the Angoras or do you just use them for fiber?
Yeah,
do you ever
breed
cross?
As well. Yeah, we breed as well. Since we've gotten so much more involved on the dairy side, I'm down to just 3 Angoras. And I sold a buck that I had. I used him in on the does that I have currently, and then sold them this past fall. But we breed and we have kids as well. There are some people out there who like to cross Nigerians and Angoras together. I don't do that just because I prefer the integrity of the breed as it, I guess, it, for what it is, right? When you cross the two, you typically get like a more cashmere type fiber, and it has to be de-haired because the Nigerians, they throw in this kind of like long, straight, prickly hair that we're all used to and know about from shaving them for shows. And then the Angoras produce mohair. So you get kind of a cross between the two. And there's a lot of variation also in that coat. So you can have one that produces more mohair type hair versus one that produces, more Nigerian hair, but with like that cashmere downy undercoat that they grow in the wintertime. So there's a lot of variation that you can get when you do cross the two. And that's really, the reason why I've not done that. I prefer my Angoras to make nice mohair and my Nigerians to produce, quality milk.
Do you personally use the mohair to make things?
Yeah, we do. We do. I do a little bit of like hand spinning with a drop spindle, and then we do some felting and that kind of thing. And actually, I wrote an article that was in the ANDDA member newsletter in December, and it was about felting. And I felted some little like soap sleeves. So a lot of dairy goat breeders and owners make soaps. And we haven't really gotten into the soap making ourselves yet, but I have wet felted some little sleeves that you can slip a bar of soap into. So there's the felted soaps that have they enclose the soap bar, right? But then once you use the soap, it's like you just have this bit of felt or fiber that you kind of toss away. Well, the sleeve was kind of cool in that you could reuse it. It's like a built-in washcloth essentially.
Do you have those available for sale, like on a website or something, or just make them for fun?
We just make them for fun. It's kind of time consuming to do the felting, so it's a labor of love more than something that I have been able to do and sell. I work full time as well, so between that and the children and then the goats, it's all hands on deck all the time.
So if you're not making soap with your milk, which is what a lot of people do, or they, live in an area where they can do herd shares or something like that, you are one of the larger herds that we've spoken with so far. And what are you doing with all that milk? Is most of it going back to the kids? Are you not freshening everybody every year?
Yeah, a lot of it is going to my kids. So we bottle raise everybody. And so a lot of it goes back to my kids. We are licensed to sell. In Texas, you can get a license to sell raw milk for animal consumption. So we're licensed to sell, and I do sell to mostly people that have that raise puppies, or I've got somebody that buys from me that has a baby kangaroo. Yeah, so it's kind of neat, being able to sell the milk for other people to be able to raise their pets or their animals. Other people that have maybe orphaned goats or that are bottle feeding goats. So the any leftover milk that we have does go and is sold.
Do you consider yourself more of like a homesteader type herd, or are you more into the performance, show, linear appraisal, that type of stuff?
Definitely more into performance. Unfortunately, last year with linear being canceled, we didn't get to participate in that. We did do owner sampler 40 last year. And I went to 240 days with a few of mine and then kind of dried off. It was so weird with COVID and being just the crazy year that it was. But we got our feet wet definitely last year, and I was able to get milk stars on 2 of my does. And so that was fun and a learning experience. And we're doing owner sampler again this year. But showing is really, that's the fun part to me. Not only being able to see how my does do and get feedback from the judges, but then also to, be able to evaluate my herd and decide, who fits into our goals and our vision of where we want to take our herd and our breeding program. But then also I love the social aspect of it, like I feel like goat friends are the best friends. So the social aspect of showing is really enjoyable to me as well.
Nice. Were you interested in kind of talking through a few of your animals or your website a little bit so we can kind of get an idea of what your herd's all about?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me do a screen. We really, really lucked out with our first herd sire. His name is Rebel Poe. Chicks with Goats Rebel Poe. He is from another herd in Texas that does not do any type of performance programs. But we got him as an 8-week-old, just weaned buckling. And he's now a dual finish champion. He was the reserve grand champion at AGS Nationals last year in Norman, Oklahoma. And so he's positioned here right at the top of our homepage. And he's just a really cool buck, not only in conformation, but in personality. And I love that his kids kind of have that same great, personality that he does. So we've used him pretty heavily in our breeding plans last year as well as this year. I showed several of his daughters last year, one of which earned her junior leg last year. Her name is Hera Sindula. We have, a lot of people do like different plays off of the dam's name for the kids, but last year we decided we wanted to do Star Wars kind of theme off of his kids as well. So we've got a lot of his kids that have a Star Wars theme on their name. But Hera is due to freshen this weekend, and I've freshened 4 of his other daughters. I just freshened in February. So I'm excited to see their udders and what he's doing for those. Conformation wise, he's been fantastic. I mean, he produces awesome dairy long kids that have performed really well in the show ring, and so I've been really pleased with that. You can see kind of some pictures of his kids here in this kind of photo collage. If you are an ANDDA member, you saw him on the February month in the ANDDA gestational calendar. So that was kind of cool for us to be able to participate in as well. Okay, so he primarily is, he's our main buck. He's our main guy. We did do AGS classification with him at nationals last year, since we weren't able to do linear appraisal, and he classified at 89.5, which the classifier said is like just the absolute highest that he could get as a 2-year-old buck at that time. So that was exciting as well.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive for a young buck. Usually they're pretty brutal on those young guys until they've fully matured.
Yeah, and we with linear appraisal not being firmed up for this year, I think we're definitely going to take advantage of AGS classification and try and get some of our does classified as well this year, just because that's valuable, so valuable, like for me. Especially, since we're a young, herd, for us to be able to evaluate the does that we have and decide, where our strengths, where our weaknesses are, and how we can better what we're doing.
I have done linear appraisal through ADGA before, but I have never done it through AGS, the classification program. Could you talk a little bit about, are they pretty similar? Are they different?
The feedback that you get from them, and how it's broken down into different categories and things, I think that they're pretty similar. Instead of like with bucks, you would typically get like 3 letters, right? Like you could have like a V, E, E for a buck. You don't get that with with AGS. You just get like kind of an overall score, like the 89 and a half.
Okay.
So that's one of the differences, I would say, but I think they're both super awesome programs in being able to evaluate the animals that you have.
Are all of your animals dual registered then, or no?
No, they're not. So we primarily register with ADGA. Poe is registered with AGS as well. In order to do classification, you have to be registered with AGS, and it has to be a second freshening animal also. So that's something that's, I guess, a little bit, different from ADGA versus AGS. ADGA, they can be a first freshener and do linear appraisal versus classification. They have to be a second freshener.
Okay.
Bucks, I think they just have to be, I don't know if it's 12 or 18 months. There's a requirement on age for bucks. Another thing that's kind of interesting and that I've learned about AGS too is that you can show your animal that's ADGA registered at an AGS show, and if you win, you have, I think it's like 3 months or something like that in order to register your animal with AGS, and you can still keep that AGS title that you won at that show. So that's something that I learned from showing at AGS Nationals last year.
I did not know that either. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people know. I mean, I think Nigerians are definitely the majority of animals that are registered with AGS, and I think it's becoming more and more popular, at least down here in Texas it is, for shows to be dual sanctioned. And that, in my mind, is just, it's like, and he's who we use pretty heavily on most of our does. He's bred a few outside does as well. We have had him collected a couple of times, and we do have semen available at a couple of different facilities stored here in Texas. So if anybody is interested in AI, we had him collected and have from frozen semen straws available from him. Here's his show record. He's been all over the place. We've been to Colorado, we've been to Missouri, we've been to Oklahoma, we've been to Georgia. We've really enjoyed, I enjoy showing bucks. I feel like it's so much less stress than showing does. A couple other bucks that we have are Lost Valley CC Redman Star B, Brazos Valley HP Hutch Star B, and then Winning Streak EB Simon Says. Really excited about this young buck. We just brought him home from Florida in November. And he'll be used pretty heavily in our plans for 2022, so this fall when we breed.
How did you pick him? What were you looking for when you brought him into your herd?
So I would say I was really looking for a buck that kind of tied it all together. I wanted something with, correct conformation, but then also that was going to increase udder capacity, give me correct teat placement, and teat size. So Poe has conformation in spades, but because he came from a herd that doesn't do any performance programs, like the udder photos that I have of his dam are like dam raised pasture shots. And so I've never really gotten even to see like a really good fill on her. And I don't know what her milk production looks like. So udder was something that we really focused on when looking for another buck to kind of complement him. Simon, his dam is Winning Streak CM Hopscotch. And count on me, Woodbridge Farm, count on me. All of his daughters have just amazing udders. We also got a doeling from them that's a count daughter. But Hopscotch is a second freshener this year. She has amazing capacity, teat size, teat placement. And so that was something that I was like, I really want to add as an influence into our herd. And then Exotic Bird has produced amazing daughters as well. And I'm a huge Phoenix Farm Summer Bird fan. I just think she's a beautiful doe. I fell in love with her when I first saw her photo a couple years ago. And so really like the combination of genetics that he provides. And then I'm hoping that he just gives us some really nice, beautiful udders with awesome teeth.
Have you started kidding yet this year?
Yes. So we started kidding in December. And I have been bottle feeding. I was washing bottles the other night and I was like, oh my gosh, I have been bottle feeding 3 times a day since before Thanksgiving. I was like, I'm ready to be done with bottle feeding for the year. But I have 5 does that are due within the next week. And then I have 2 does that are due in April. And that will like culminate our kidding for the year. The majority of our does have already kidded. And so you can see on here on our kidding schedule, Poe got the majority of the girls. A few of these were does outside of our herd that he bred. But then we've used some other does. I've bought a few bred does. And so they were added to our schedule. So we've got some other bucks here in the mix. A kidding that just happened this past Saturday that I'm really excited about is this MerryTale RP Ahsoka Tano. It's a line breeding. I bred her to her half brother. MerryTale RP Solo. It combines 2 of my favorite dams that we own. And then, line breeds on Poe. So she gave me a buck kid and a doe kid. We're retaining the doe kid. The buck kid I will probably make available as a registered duckling. Most of the time I don't do that out of my first fresheners, but I'm kind of excited about this line breeding, and I think it'll be cool to see what we get out of it. But I'll show you.
Have you done quite a few sibling line breedings or half sibling?
Yeah, this is the first that I've ever done. I own a doe that is by a dual finish champion buck. The doe's name, she's due this weekend as well. Her name is SK Bull Metal TTC Gianna B. Her sire is Gypsy Moon Take Me to Church, owned by SK Bull Metal. And then her dam is a really lovely like EV91 doe that is Harlequin Creme Brulee. Unfortunately, she passed away this year. But that was a half sibling line breeding as well. And so she's due to freshen this weekend. And I'm excited to see what her udder looks like. Where was I going here? Okay, Ahsoka. Yeah. So this doe, this picture is actually from AGS Nationals, but one of the things that I am really striving towards is like just a nice, very level hips to pins, nice rump. And this doe has that beautifully. Her dam has an amazing rump. She has an amazing rump. Poe puts great rumps on his kids. But what she lacks is more width and substance and strength. And the buck that I bred her to, that's her half brother, has that. He, as a yearling, won a reserve champion at a Nigerian only show that was held in Brenham, Texas. It was called Deck the Stalls. It was this past December. And there were over 40 Nigerian bucks that showed there, and he won a reserve, not shaved, like all of his like ugly, long, ruddy glory, but he's just super strong. And the judge was like, when you look at a buck, like you want that masculine, that strength. You want to look at him and go, wow, he is just a strong, great looking buck, and her half brother has that. And so I'm excited about adding that strength and that width and that power to her super long, dairy, refined look, and seeing what their kids look like. I prefer that more refined dairy type Nigerian rather than that wide, stockier, super strong look. So I don't know. It's fun to cross animals that look or those different types, different looks, and see what you get.
Agree. She's a pretty girl. It would be interesting to see her with a little bit more body, but she's young too, so some of that's just maturity.
Yeah, she was. Let's see. She was born January 30th, and this was in June. So she was young there. She wasn't even 6 months old, I don't think so. But yeah, she's a cutie, and she's my husband's favorite.
Aw. So what do you have on the agenda for 2021? Are things starting to turn around in your area as far as shows and?
Yeah, I've got to throw a shout out here. I'm chairing 2 shows here in Weatherford. One is a buck show. It's the Central Texas Dairy Goat Association Big Buck Bonanza. It's at the end of this month, March 27th in Weatherford, Texas. It's a 4-ring buck show. And then we also have a doe show and a youth show that are going to be April 16th and 17th here in Weatherford. Youth show on the 16th, that's Friday night, and then Saturday the 17th there's a 3-ring open doe show. So I'm chairing both of those, my first time chairing the show. I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited at the same time, and it's here right in my hometown and in my backyard, so that's nice as well.
Yeah, good luck. I did my first show last year, and yeah, definite learning curve, but it was exciting and fun, and I would definitely do it again. But it's like anything you do for the first time. Yeah, there's always going to be something that some glitch or something you would have done differently. But in general, I think the judges are awesome. They were really helpful at my show. Had plenty of questions, and they had done this so many times before, paperwork and all that they were really, really helpful.
Yeah, and I hear, there are so many, there's just so many, I feel like, new breeders and new Nigerian owners that want to show, but they're just nervous and they're like, I don't know where to start. And my best advice is just go, like load up, a couple of your favorites and go to a show and get your feet wet. And there's so many helpful people and other breeders that are willing to, help you out at the shows as well as beforehand. That it's fun and it's low stress to me. I'm like, compared to like horse shows or something like that, like goat shows are a breeze. I feel like it's just fun.
Do you have any last things you'd like to share with anybody? Do you have kids available right now if anyone's interested in possibly getting a kid from you or a doe?
Yeah, I have a couple of bucklings available. I do have a wait list for does. Let me share this. I don't have the best photo. This is a horrible photo of this doe. Once she gets shaved, she will get an updated photo, but she's a second freshener. I really love her udder. And this is just at like 2 days fresh here. So we just did her first milk test over the weekend, and she milked almost 4 pounds, but she was also like at 8% butter fat at only a couple of weeks fresh, and she was at like 4.5% protein, so she was right there with the rest of my does. So I was really pleased with her, her first test, and excited to see, as her udder, as we, continue through her lactation, what her udder looks like. So I've got a buckling available out of her that's 5 and then once I decide if I'm going to let that other little buckling go from the line breeding, I think I probably will let him go as a registered buck, but I haven't done a fill on his dam yet, so I kind of want to see that first. Yeah, we've got like 5 does due this weekend and then a couple due in April. So we'll definitely still have some kids available. And, you know, people always change their minds as far as wait lists and reservations go. So we may have some does, you know, yet available as well. I've got 15 does on the milking stand right now, so I've got to make a couple of cuts there. I'm just, it's a lot. That's a lot of does to milk. I know some people milk like 20, 25, but you know, when you work full time and have children too, it's a lot to manage.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your herd with us today. As always, we learned a lot. It was really neat of you to share the Angora stuff with us too, because I know a lot of us are here because we're Nigerian breeders, but I always like to hear a little bit of insight into what other people are doing with their goats on their farms. So thank you very much and good luck with your show season.
Thank you.